everybody. So it was so much fun to get a chance to talk to David Lipper, but he was on set, so there is some background noise and some other things. It's not perfect, but hopefully you still enjoy what he had to say. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And today we are talking with actor David Lipper, and he is in the new film Just Swipe that is coming out on VOD. And is it coming out in theaters?
No, it's right now. It's a VOD play.
Yeah, VOD.
It's going to be on all the transactional VOD platforms.
Yeah. So he's coming out with a movie with Jodie Sweetin called Just Swipe. And we're really excited to get a chance to talk with him. And thank you so much, David, for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So what we like to do with our guests is we like to get a chance to get to know you and find out what inspired you to get into acting.
Oh, geez. I started acting when I was about 8. I did a show called The Gondoliers. I think my mom just wanted me out of the house because I couldn't stop singing and bouncing around. Funny enough, I was a musical theater guy. And a lot of the great comedy people, believe it or not, started in musical theater. That was kind of where it all began. It was musicals all the way through college, where Emerson College, I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in musical theater. I'll never forget our last show, the big show. They would do one big show a year that everybody wanted to get into. And they even had the New England Conservatory would have people that got to be in the shows or could audition for the shows. So it was a big deal when you got the lead. And we did Into the Woods, and James Lapine came to the show and he said, "Where's Rapunzel's Prince?" which is what I played. And he came and found me backstage and he said, "You need to do this for a living. You got something." And then he walked away. And everyone was like, "Screw you, David." But it was kind of that boost of confidence I really needed that propelled me into the journey to LA. And that's what I did. And it was a tough choice because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to New York and give Broadway a shot or come to Los Angeles and focus more on TV. But I had done a soap opera in Canada called Time of Your Life, which ran for a year. And I just thought I'd have a better shot at TV than at Broadway. I just thought there were stronger dancers and singers, and I was really just a better actor. And so I came out to LA, and it wasn't soon after that I ended up on Full House. And of course, being in a comedy that I also got to sing and play guitar on as Viper was just the natural progression for me coming from that musical theater background. Yeah. That's kind of how it all started.
That's great. So you started out in Canada, in Montreal?
Yeah, in Montreal.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great. That's a great story. I love musical theater. I'm a huge theater nerd, so that's great.
Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, playing Viper on Full House, that must have been a fun experience to kind of be the sort of.
It was the best. It was the best. And obviously this is a bit of a touchy time with the passing of Bob Saget, who we all loved. Bob was that go-to guy who joked around a lot. But at the end of the day, when he had to get serious, he would get serious. And there was a time where I needed him, and he was there for me. It was like a stupid thing. I needed a day off. And sorry for the background here. I'm on set shooting a new film called Candy Flip. So I've managed to squeeze out 10 minutes here to talk to you. But Bob really was a special guy. And like I said, when I needed him to talk to the producers on my behalf and go to bat for me, he was there. But really the whole cast was lovely. Obviously, Candace Cameron was my go-to since we were playing boyfriend-girlfriend. And John Stamos and I were pretty close because we were in the band together. And we're still pretty close to this day. I consider John a good friend, and I talk to him when I can. Both busy guys. I've made now 7 films since COVID started, and John never stops working. Yeah, it's been a crazy run. I know a lot of people have had a lot of downtime during this period, but those of us in the movie business have had an opportunity to keep working as we, fall under that special category of media. So when there was lockdown and stuff, we were the one vocation to keep going. And I think rightfully so. People need, if they're going to be locked in their homes, they need stuff to put on the TV so they don't go crazy. Obviously the news being the first most important, but then, entertainment to just not go crazy.
Yeah, to not like help your mental health get through it. Like we have needed it, whether it was, Squid Game or Ted Lasso or, whatever it might be. We needed it.
Whatever works for you.
We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
So was that pretty surreal to come back for Fuller House for some episodes?
Oh, it's so funny. I got the call saying, so the show's back and they want you to come back. And I said, what show? They're like, Full House. Fuller House is now the reboot. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Okay, sure. Of course I'll come back. And they said, okay, it's going to be her high school reunion episode. And I'm like, high school reunion? But I wasn't at the high school when I was on the show. And they were like, no, that's okay. It's going to play. I'm like, okay. And what a trip coming back to the old stage at Warner Brothers, which became the Friends stage, funny enough. So there's a big plaque on there saying the Friends stage, which obviously was a big hit. We hold the work, fellas. Welcome to set life. And it was a real trip to come back, see the old stage, the old sets, like the couch and the door, even that front door to the house, like all that stuff. It was like a giant flashback. So it was a big trip.
That's great.
And it was amazing, and Candace and Jodie Sweetin, of course, my co-star in Just Swipe, or truly the star of the movie, and Andrea, the three of them, now the stars of the reboot, was something to see them grown up. And they've really, all three developed into very well-rounded actors. When I worked with them, they were kids. And then they grew into really strong, powerful actors as women. So it was really nice to see that transition. I was just excited to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about Just Swipe. This is really one of the first comedies that I've seen come out that really tackles COVID quarantine and like the whole relationship over Zoom and all of that. Like, was that something that made you a little bit nervous about it, or?
Well, here's the thing, and I'm just going to get to a safer spot here as the crew is moving around. So we wanted to do a film that talked about what it's like dating, having romance, having some kind of normal life in quarantine. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, not get stuck in quarantine where we don't want to see that anymore. We don't want to see the masks. We don't want to see the anxiety of the quarantine. We want to find a fun, romantic comedy within that space. So there was a very careful balance between showing just enough of mask, just enough of being on Zoom or on your phone or your laptop to get a sense of what it was like then, but do it in a way that we focused on the positives. And I think it's really important that message be clear, because we want to have positive messages when we make films. We want to say, look, there's a way to get through this stuff. Here's a healthy way to do it. And not only that, it almost takes us back to what romance used to be. The world we live in today, with social media and instant access and all these dating apps, it doesn't take much to meet someone and take them home. And there's a physical interaction before you get to know the person. And within that world, we've lost getting to know somebody. We've lost that courting period where we get to know somebody on a friendship basis before we get into the physical romantic basis. And really, this takes us back to classic romance, where we have to get to know the person first before that first kiss ever happens. And that first kiss can't happen until the end. That's the way the old classic rom-coms used to go. And so we almost are forced back into that. And while we're in a modern age with phones and computers and, FaceTiming and talking to each other through this handheld device like you and I are doing right now, we really have been forced to go back to the way it was when we had to get to know a person first before jumping into bed with them. And you see that transition from pre-COVID, where you see Jodie in that world, to in COVID and post-COVID, where she changes. And so I think that's a really strong message to everybody out there who is single and dating, that maybe it's time to take the lessons that we've been forced to learn in COVID, which is maybe we take a step back and we get to know somebody first before going to the next level.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
I found that very refreshing. And I feel like most of the media that I've seen has kind of ignored COVID because we want that escapism. And I understand that. But it was kind of refreshing to see something that just kind of took it on and found the humor in it. And I would think it would be kind of cathartic to be in the film and kind of process this experience through the script.
Yeah, well said. I mean, we kind of lived through that moment. And, it was a little strange for me because Candace was my girlfriend on Full House and Jodie was the younger sister. So I think there was a little bit of that awkwardness of, oh, I'm dating the younger sister. But honestly, really, it didn't take much for her and I to jump into this. I've gotten to know Jodie as an adult before this film even started. And she's just a wonderful person. And I know her ex-husband well. So there was already a friendship there. So it didn't take much to click into the friendship side. And, and then the romance, if there was anything that was awkward, it's the when we finally meet in person moment, which was perfect because it is awkward today when you develop a relationship online and then you actually meet in person for the first time. And it's like, oh, you're there. It's not a camera. It's not a screen. It's a person. And oh my God, I can smell you. And now I'm touching you. And wow, it's like a whole new sensory feeling from the feeling that we get through the cameras. So all that played and it played well. And we shot it chronologically in that sense.
Oh, you did?
We got through all the Zoom stuff first. Absolutely. So when we got to the physical meeting, that was pretty real.
That's interesting. I really liked the whole sense of sort of friendship between you and Jodie and the two other actors that and I think that's something that in an odd way, I think some of our friendships have actually like improved because we needed them more in a way through this whole experience and, having Zoom chats and all that stuff like that. I thought that was good.
I got to say, you're only as strong as your supporting cast. Mm-hmm. And when we got Alec Mapa, I was already excited because I knew how funny he was, but you don't truly appreciate how funny he is until you see the film. Yeah. And there's just a new energy that kicks in as soon as he opens his mouth and enters the frame. And there's something about people like that you can't teach. You can't put a finger on it. They're just those kinds of people. He is funny enough, he did a pilot with Alec Baldwin and Kelsey Grammer right after this. But I saw an interview with Alec, who said, he's a comedic genius and one of the funniest people he's ever worked with. So that's coming from a guy who's won countless Emmys.
Right.
in the comedy space. It gives you an idea of just how talented this guy is. And we were over the moon to get him, and he just lights up that screen. And, you know, you add all the supporting cast too of the smaller parts, the Eddie McClintocks that come in for a scene or two, who are going to make you laugh. Kelly Price, all these people that made their little cameos, all of them are part of the success of this film, and we're really proud of it.
I really liked it. I was a little bit hesitant going into it because I don't know, like we said, I just haven't seen that many films tackle quarantine, and I thought it wasn't just a gimmick, it was actually funny and sweet and a good script. So I appreciated it.
I appreciate that so much. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm sorry
Yes.
I'm here on set. It's a little
That's
chaotic,
okay.
but I'm glad I got to step out for a few minutes and talk to you. And thank you so much for having me on the
Yeah.
show.
Thank you. And do you have social media or anything like that you want to share?
Absolutely. For the most part, you can get me on Instagram at David Lipper. I think Jody's at Jody Sweeten. And there will be some socials up at some point, I think, for the film, but none that I know of at the moment. But certainly reach out to us. We'll be posting all about the film. And again, my Instagram's at David Lipper, Facebook, David Lipper. And I really hope you all get to see the film because we're really proud of it.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, let us know if you're listening what you think of all the different things we've talked about. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And thanks so much, David, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to thank David for coming on the podcast. It was so much fun to get to talk with him. Please let us know your thoughts of all the different topics that we covered. And please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. We sure appreciate that. And also, if you're listening on iTunes, please leave us your 5-star reviews. It helps us so much. We also have our merch store and Patreon group, and we appreciate that support so much. Thanks again to David, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.